They didn't wear masks. They didn't hide in the shadows. They wore badges, symbols of justice, turned into licenses to kill. From the Wild West to the city streets, some of the most dangerous men in American history were the very ones sworn to protect it. This isn't fiction. This is the true story of when the law became lawless. In the late 1800s, the American frontier was a violent and lawless region, and ironically, the men chosen to enforce the law often became the most dangerous figures in town. Many lawmen were former outlaws or gunslingers who used their badges to continue lives of violence under the veil of legality. One such figure was Bob Meldrum, a deputy in Colorado who operated under the Pinkerton Detective Agency. Meldrum had a reputation for being deadly quick with a gun and reportedly killed over a dozen men. Locals feared him more than they trusted him, and his position as a deputy gave him nearly unchecked power. He was known to settle personal scores and enforce his own version of justice. In an era where justice was often about survival, men like Meldrum blurred the line between protector and predator. The badge, instead of being a symbol of law and order, became a license to kill without consequences. Dangerous Dan Tucker was a legendary lawman from the American Southwest, whose reputation remains controversial to this day. As a deputy U.S. Marshal and Railroad Special Officer, Tucker was officially charged with protecting order in frontier territories. However, many saw him as a ruthless enforcer rather than a fair peacekeeper. His nickname, Dangerous Dan, came from his tendency to shoot first and ask questions later. Tucker was involved in numerous killings, some during official duty, others in questionable circumstances. He saw no difference between suspects and confirmed criminals. His fast draw and deadly accuracy made him feared not only by outlaws but also by local civilians. Though many viewed him as a necessary evil in chaotic times, others believed he was a murderer cloaked in law enforcement. Tucker represents a broader truth about early American policing. When accountability is absent, even a badge can empower brutality. During World War I, the US government took extraordinary steps to suppress dissent and maintain national unity. One of the most controversial moves was the creation of the American Protective League in 1917, a civilian-run domestic intelligence agency sanctioned by the Justice Department. Over 250,000 volunteers were issued badges, armbands, and ID cards, effectively granting them informal law enforcement powers. These citizen agents patrolled neighborhoods, conducted surveillance, searched homes without warrants, and interrogated citizens about their loyalty. Immigrants, union organizers, and anti-war activists were especially targeted. Without formal training or oversight, APL members acted on personal biases, spreading fear and trampling civil liberties. Many victims had no legal recourse as the line between official law enforcement and volunteer zealots was intentionally blurred. Historians describe the APL as one of the darkest experiments in American policing, proof that the wrong people, when given badges and political backing, can become dangerous tools of oppression. Although the APL was disbanded after the war, its legacy remains a cautionary tale about the dangers of mixing unchecked power, nationalism, and unofficial policing. The APL didn't just wear badges, they wore them with a sense of superiority that turned neighbors into spies and citizens into suspects. Throughout the 20th century, major American cities struggled with deep-rooted police corruption. Officers in uniform often operated as criminals, using their positions to run illegal operations. Chicago's Joseph Midzianowski is a prime example. A decorated narcotics officer, Midzianowski lived a double life. While arresting drug dealers by day, he was also supplying them with drugs, leaking police operations, and extorting money at night. It took years before fellow officers dared to expose him, and by then, the damage was immense. Entire investigations compromised, innocent lives ruined, and the public's trust shattered. Cities like New York, Miami, and New Orleans faced similar scandals where entire units were exposed for running protection rackets, stealing evidence, and framing suspects. These stories aren't about a few bad apples. They reveal systems that allowed and protected corruption. When officers become criminals, the public loses faith in justice, and the badge becomes a symbol of fear rather than protection. In the late 1990s, the Los Angeles Police Department was rocked by the Rampart scandal. one of the largest cases of police corruption in American history. Officers in the Rampart Division's elite anti-gang unit were found to have engaged in widespread criminal activities, including planting evidence, using excessive force, dealing drugs, and even attempted murder. The most infamous figure was Officer Rafael Perez, who eventually confessed to framing innocent people, stealing narcotics from police evidence rooms, and lying under oath. His testimony implicated over 70 officers and led to the overturning of more than 100 criminal convictions. The scandal exposed a culture within the LAPD that rewarded aggression and ignored complaints. Internal affairs often looked the other way, allowing a small group of officers to operate like a gang within the department. The public was outraged, and city officials had to pay over $125 million in legal settlements. The Rampart case showed how power and loyalty within law enforcement can create an environment where officers act with impunity. When the people wearing badges are the ones committing crimes, it undermines not just the justice system, but the very idea of law and order. James E. Davis served 2 controversial terms as chief of the Los Angeles Police Department during the early 20th century. Nicknamed Two-Gun Davis for carrying dual revolvers, he promoted a style of policing rooted in brute force and intimidation. Under his command, the LAPD became known for political repression, surveillance, and acts of violence against reformers, minorities, and anyone labeled as radical. Davis openly encouraged officers to shoot first, especially during his infamous campaign to rid LA of organized crime. But his war on crime often ignored due process. His force was implicated in bombings, illegal raids, and beatings. He defended such tactics as necessary toughness, but critics labeled him a tyrant with a badge. Davis also formed the Red Squad to suppress labor movements, violating free speech and civil rights. The LAPD under Davis was feared more than respected. His legacy reflects a dangerous philosophy that law enforcement must dominate rather than serve. With the backing of political elites, Davis molded the department into an authoritarian force, one that taught officers to equate criticism with crime. Today, the history of law enforcement abuse has triggered reform in how badges are treated, not just physically, but symbolically. In Philadelphia, for instance, Police Chief Danielle Outlaw ordered that the badges of disgraced officers be melted down, a powerful gesture signaling that trust once broken cannot simply be reassigned. New badge numbers are tied to a historical ledger, so incoming officers know whose legacy they inherit. Training now includes lessons in historical abuses, transparency requirements, and community oversight. However, public skepticism remains. High-profile cases of police violence continue to surface, reminding the world that power must be balanced with accountability. For reform to work, a badge must not just represent authority, it must represent responsibility. The dangerous men of the past wore badges without consequence. Today's officers are called to rebuild the meaning of that symbol. Whether they succeed will depend on whether policing moves toward justice or remains trapped in a legacy of unchecked power. They wore badges, but not all of them served justice. Some protected the law, others became the law and twisted it. From dusty streets of the Old West to modern cities, history has shown us unchecked power turns protectors into predators. But we are not powerless. By remembering the past, we can demand better for the future. Justice begins when we stop blindly trusting symbols and start holding systems accountable. If this story opened your eyes, don't stay silent. Thanks for watching.